Today I'm going to be giving a speech about GMOs and why they are important. GMOs have been around for about as long as humanity has been planting plants. It took the form of selective breeding, which was farmers or anyone who grew plants to survive back in the day would grow the plants and they would keep the ones that grew the best and then use the seeds from those to grow more. They didn't know this at the time. They were just doing what got them the most food, but they were practicing a form of genetic modification. And this has been around forever, and it's still used today. They've used it with bananas. Bananas, they've also been scientifically modified, but they are to the point where you can no longer take a seed from a banana you can buy at the store because the seed is no longer viable. It's just left over from nature. But it's very effective to do this. Another example of GMOs are tomatoes. Tomatoes have been modified scientifically to make it so that they last roughly twice as long on the shelf. This has made it to where stores do not have to get tomatoes as often, and they can sell their product for much longer, which is great for the farmers and great for the stores who sell them. Another example is corn. Corn used to be much smaller. The kernels used to be a lot smaller, and they used to taste bitter. But the Aztecs did a little bit of this. Modern corn is the product of scientific modification, but the Aztecs did practice selective breeding, and they stayed towards the corn that tasted sweeter and had larger kernels. That way it could feed more people, and it would taste better. And those are all examples of GMOs throughout history and how they've been brought forward today. And of course, since GMOs are so useful, there's still all kinds of tests being done on them. One example of purely scientific modification is the chocolate. Cocoa beans, about 30 or 40 years ago, were going extinct. There was a plague in South America that was wiping out all the trees that grew chocolate beans, cocoa beans, and chocolate companies didn't really know how to deal with it. They had the plague that none of their trees were immune to because they all had one breed of chocolate tree, and they also needed more and more because of the rising demand of chocolate. And so one man took it upon himself to try and fix this. He experimented around with different breeds, and he crossbred for a little bit, and eventually he went to a lab, and after years of work, he created a breed of cocoa bean that would create beans that were roughly twice the size of other beans being used in commercial purposes, but they were very bitter. And so all major chocolate companies refused to use these beans, even though they were immune to the plague that was going on around the time. They said that people would not buy the product because the chocolate would taste bad. This man, eventually, he died a few years later, and not too long after he died, chocolate companies realized the plague is going to run its course, they can't stop it. And they needed more chocolate because customers wanted it, and so they decided to give these cocoa beans a chance. All they had to do was just add more sugars, and this allowed the chocolate industry to explode. It became so much more popular. They had no problem meeting the demands of the consumers because they had twice the output now. It's a travesty that the man was not able to see his work used for what he wanted it, though, in his life. But that is another example of how GMOs have been useful throughout history, and it's a more modern example. And now for what's the most controversial thing about GMOs, pesticides. A lot of people don't like the idea of pesticides being produced by the plant because they feel like the plant would be poisonous to them because it's poisonous to insects. But a lot of plants today produce Bt toxin, and that comes from Bacillus thuringiensis, which is related to the bacteria that produces anthrax. Now, anthrax is deadly to humans. It will kill you within a matter of minutes. But this Bt toxin, scientists have engineered it so that it won't affect humans. Instead, when an insect consumes it, it causes the lining of their digestive tract to disintegrate. So they melt from the inside out, and that kills them pretty quickly. Humans, though, it doesn't affect us because there's one, not large enough quantities, and two, our stomach acid, our digestive tract in general works different than insects, and so it's able to handle that. But that is a big point of controversy in today's society. GMOs have served many uses throughout history, and they're continuing to serve uses today. And there's several examples not relating to plants, but this speech is focusing on plants. But we've genetically modified livestock so that they'll be larger and produce more meat. They'll taste better. And we genetically modified the AIDS virus, HIV. So this is currently in testing, but scientists have been able to successfully use it to kill cancer cells, to target and kill cancer-specific cells. And so this is very useful in medical technologies. It's still very new technology, though, so it's only being used in tests right now. But it has been successfully used to cure cancer. And there's so many uses for GMOs, and I believe that they should be a big part of society today because they're very good financially for businesses and consumers. They have several uses, such as for your health and for consumption. And the science behind them is kind of cool. And this was my speech on GMOs.